The jungle was alive with strange sounds, every shadow moving as if it had teeth. The alien girl, slender but strong, pushed through the thick vines with sharp breaths. Her people had warned her never to travel this far, but she had no choice. She needed to cross this wild land to reach the mountains where her tribe waited. The air was damp, heavy with mist, and every step she took seemed to echo in the silence. She felt watched. Her hand reached for the curved blade at her hip, though she knew it would do little against the great beast that lived here. Her heart beat faster, her violet eyes scanning the branches above and the ground below. A low hiss cut through the stillness. She froze. Something thick and cold brushed against her leg, and before she could react, it wrapped around her. A massive serpent. Its scales, black as stone, coiled its body around her torso, pinning her arms to her sides. She gasped as the air was crushed out of her lungs. The snake's yellow eyes glowed with hunger as its forked tongue flickered in front of her face. She struggled, but the more she fought, the tighter it squeezed. Pain shot through her chest. She tried to cry out, but her voice was only a whisper. Her fingers clawed at the scales, but it was like tearing at iron. Her vision blurred. The jungle spun. And then, through the haze, a sound she had never expected to hear in these cursed lands, a human voice. Hold on. Her mind stuttered. A human here? No, it was impossible. Her people believed humans reckless, weak, and far from their worlds. Yet out of the mist a figure appeared, a man. His clothes were torn from travel, dirt on his face, but his eyes were sharp with determination. In his hand he carried no blade, no gun, only a small leather bag slung at his side. He ran forward, fearless, though the serpent's head turned toward him with a hiss that shook the ground. The alien girl tried to shout at him to run, to save himself, but no words came out. The man threw his bag down and whistled sharply. From inside the bag slithered something smaller, thinner, but quick. A snake unlike any she had seen before. Its body gleamed bronze in the faint light, its eyes dark and alert. An earth creature. The girl could hardly believe it, but she watched as the human snake darted forward faster than her own eyes could follow. It launched itself onto the giant serpent's head, coiling around its thick neck, biting at its scales with tiny sharp teeth. The massive snake hissed and thrashed, loosening its grip around her. Air rushed back into her lungs. She coughed, her chest aching, her arms finally free enough to reach her blade. The jungle roared with chaos. The human shouted, guiding his pet with sharp whistles, each sound pushing the earth snake to strike harder. The alien girl gritted her teeth and twisted her body, jamming her blade between the thick coils that held her legs. The serpent shrieked, uncoiling just enough for her to stumble free and fall to the ground. Her knees hit the dirt. She gasped, dragging in air like water after drowning. Sweat covered her skin, her hair tangled with leaves. She looked up at the human, who now stood only a few feet away, his strange pet still locked in battle. The giant snake slammed against the trees, trying to crush the smaller one, but the earth python clung on, relentless. The girl staggered to her feet, blade raised, fury burning in her chest. She would not be prey again. With a sharp cry, she lunged forward. Her blade cut deep into the serpent's side. The creature recoiled, hissing in pain, and loosened its body long enough for the human's python to slide back to safety. The giant snake writhed, blood dripping onto the jungle floor, and with one final hiss it retreated into the shadows, disappearing between the trees. Silence fell. The alien girl stood trembling, her blade still wet, her chest rising and falling fast. She turned her gaze toward the human. He was breathing hard too, sweat dripping from his forehead, but he smiled faintly. His python slithered back into his arms, wrapping gently around his shoulders like a loyal guardian. For a long moment, they only stared at each other. She had nearly died, strangled by the jungle's fiercest predator. Yet here stood a stranger, one of the humans her people distrusted, who had dared to face the beast with nothing but a strange earth snake. Her voice was low, broken from the choking. Why help me? The man only shrugged, brushing dirt from his sleeve. Couldn't just stand by? The girl's eyes narrowed. She had many reasons to push him away, to distrust him. But deep inside, beneath the fear and suspicion, a new thought sparked, a dangerous thought. Perhaps this human was not like the others, and as the jungle rustled around them, she realized the night was far from over. The jungle was still, yet danger breathed through every leaf. The alien girl's chest still burned where the serpent had crushed her. She stood with her blade in hand, eyes locked on the human who had saved her. His snake curled calmly around his shoulders, its tongue flicking in and out as if nothing dangerous had happened. She had never seen such a creature before. It was smaller than the monster that had attacked her, yet it had fought with fire and cunning. Her people believed earth creatures were weak and useless, but this one had proved them wrong. The girl tightened her grip on the blade. Her tribe had taught her not to trust humans. They were reckless. They were greedy. Yet here one stood alive in her jungle, helping her against death itself. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp. The human straightened. "Daniel," he said simply. His voice was steady, though his chest rose and fell from exhaustion. "Why are you here?" she pressed. "No human should be in these lands. No one survives here." Daniel gave a small laugh, though it was more weary than amused. "Didn't plan on being here this long. But trouble finds me, and when I heard the serpent, I couldn't walk away." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't understand. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his strange snake. And yet he had run into danger for her, a stranger. The python shifted on his shoulders, its dark eyes catching the faint glow of the jungle's bioluminescent plants. Daniel reached up and stroked it gently. "This is Kale," he said softly. "My partner. We've been through worse." The alien girl's jaw tightened. That little thing should have been food for the serpent. Yet it fought like a warrior. Daniel smiled faintly. "Size isn't everything." The girl flinched at his words, though she didn't know why. Her people valued strength, size, and the crushing power of muscles and fangs. But this human's pet had shown something else. Speed, cunning, and a bond with its master that she could almost feel in the air. Before she could reply, the jungle shook. The giant serpent was not gone. It had retreated only to recover, and now its heavy body slid between the trees again. Its hiss made the ground tremble louder than thunder. The alien girl lifted her blade, but Daniel stepped forward first. "Kyle," he whispered, his voice sharp, almost commanding. The python slid down his arm, hitting the ground with a soft thud, and coiled tightly, waiting. The alien girl gasped softly. She had seen hunters command beasts before, but never with such trust. Daniel didn't shout or force. He spoke, and the snake listened. The giant serpent lunged again, mouth wide enough to swallow them whole. But Kale darted forward, not toward its fangs, but its throat. With blinding speed, the earth snake wrapped around the monster's head, twisting itself like a rope. The alien girl's eyes widened. She could almost hear the crunch of scales grinding together. Daniel moved closer, his fists clenched, his eyes never leaving the fight. He whispered short sounds, whistles, clicks, and the python obeyed, squeezing tighter, shifting its position with uncanny timing. The alien girl felt her heart hammer. This was not just a pet. This was a warrior trained in a way she had never seen. The massive serpent thrashed, slamming itself against the ground. The earth shook. Branches cracked. Kale held firm, but the girl knew it could not last forever. Her instinct screamed. She could not let the human fight alone, even if he was reckless. She leaped forward, her blade flashing, slicing into the serpent's scales. The beast howled, shaking with rage. Together, human and alien stood side by side, their movements unspoken yet in rhythm. Kale tightened, the girl struck, Daniel shouted commands. For a moment it felt like they were bound by some invisible thread. Finally, with one last hiss, the serpent recoiled. It slammed its tail against the ground, breaking roots, and then it vanished back into the jungle shadows. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing. Daniel bent down and lifted Kale back into his arms. The python slithered up his shoulder, curling around his neck, tired but alive. He stroked it gently, whispering words of comfort. The alien girl watched in silence. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but her mind was louder than her body. She had seen something impossible. A human, weak and weaponless, had turned the jungle's deadliest predator into prey, through a bond with a creature most would ignore. For the first time, she lowered her blade completely. "You fight strange," she said softly. Daniel looked at her, his face lit faintly by the glow of the jungle flowers. Maybe, but it worked. She couldn't deny it. The jungle had nearly killed her, and yet she still stood because of this human and his snake. Her tribe would laugh at such a story, but her heart knew better. She studied him quietly, her suspicion still sharp. But another feeling had begun to stir, respect. And as the night deepened, she realized the jungle wasn't the only danger anymore. The real danger was what this human was doing to her thoughts. The night air in the jungle was heavy, thick with the smell of blood and crushed leaves. The alien girl still held her blade, though her arms trembled from the serpent's grip. Her ribs ached, her breath sharp. Across from her, the human stood with his strange python resting on his shoulders. For a moment, nothing moved. Even the insects seemed to pause, as if waiting for the jungle's judgment. But the judgment came quickly. The giant serpent had not gone far. Its massive body slid back into the clearing, its scales shining faintly in the moonlight. Its tongue flicked the air, tasting the scent of its prey, of her, of the human, of the small snake that had dared to bite it. The alien girl's heart pounded. She had felt death once already tonight. She did not want to feel it again, yet something inside her snapped. Not in fear, but in fury. This jungle had almost killed her. This beast had crushed her, humiliated her, treated her like nothing but food. She was no prey. She was no weakling to be swallowed and forgotten. Her violet eyes burned. The human snake, Kale, slithered down his arm once more. Daniel gave a sharp whistle, a command. The python slid toward the monster again, fearless. But this time the alien girl moved first. She dropped to her knees, grabbed the smaller snake with both hands, and in one swift motion, leaped toward the great serpent. Daniel shouted in surprise, but she did not stop. The giant snake lunged, jaws snapping. She twisted aside, rolling through the dirt, and pressed Kyle against the serpent's neck. The earth python seemed to understand her intent. It tightened, wrapping faster, digging in with every coil. The alien girl's muscles strained. She used her own arms to push the python's body tighter, squeezing with all the strength her lungs and fury could give. She could feel the pulse of the monster beneath her palms, feel its body writhe and crash against the earth. "Now you feel it," she hissed under her breath. "Now you know what it means to be crushed." The serpent thrashed, its tail smashing against trees, breaking branches like twigs. Daniel rushed forward, his face pale, not knowing whether to pull her back or fight beside her. But the sight froze him. The alien girl, small and bruised, holding his python like a weapon, forcing the jungle's terror to its knees. Her blade fell from her hand. She didn't need it now. She had something stronger. Her rage, her will, her refusal to be prey. Kale squeezed harder, responding to her pressure, its bronze body digging deeper into the serpent's scales. The monster hissed, its yellow eyes flashing with pain. Daniel finally moved, grabbing his own blade from his boot, small compared to hers but sharp. He darted to the serpent's side and slashed, cutting across its underbelly. Blood spilled dark and hot onto the soil. The serpent convulsed, its body smashing against the ground. The girl nearly lost her grip, but she shouted and pulled harder, her arms burning, her lungs screaming. She could feel her ribs ache with every squeeze, but she did not stop. Finally, with one last violent thrash, the serpent ripped itself free, leaving deep cuts in the earth. It hissed in fury, then turned and fled into the shadows, its body crashing through trees until the sound faded into the distance. The jungle was silent again. The girl fell to her knees, gasping, her hand still clutching Kale's body. The python slithered free, unharmed, returning to Daniel's side as if nothing had happened. Daniel stared at her, eyes wide, as if he had just seen something impossible. He began, his voice rough. "You used him, you fought with him." The girl raised her head slowly, her hair tangled, sweat dripping down her face. "I turned its strength back on itself," she said, her voice raw. "It tried to crush me. I crushed it." For a moment they only looked at each other. She had been the victim, but now she had been the predator, and Daniel for the first time saw her not as someone he had saved, but as someone terrifying, someone powerful, someone who could take his own ally and turn it into a weapon greater than steel. The girl wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Her chest rose and fell fast, but her eyes still burned. "Your snake is not weak. It listens, it obeys. That is strength." Daniel swallowed, his voice softer. "He's more than that. He's family." Her lips curved in something that was not quite a smile. "Then your family helped me take back my life. The night was quiet, but not safe. The jungle still whispered with hidden threats." Yet both of them knew something had changed. The girl had seen the human's courage. Daniel had seen her fury and her will. And together, with Kale coiled between them, they had forced the tables to turn. She rose slowly, blade back in her hand, but her eyes on him. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "you are not like the other humans after all." Daniel did not reply, but the way he looked at her said everything. The jungle was calm now, but silence didn't mean safety. The alien girl walked ahead, her blade still in hand, her steps slow but alert. Behind her, Daniel followed, his python resting on his shoulders, its head slightly raised like a small guard. The path was narrow, full of twisted roots and thick leaves, but the real trouble wasn't in the trees. It was between them. The girl didn't speak. Not a word. After what had happened, after the giant serpent had almost crushed her, and after she'd turned Daniel's snake into a weapon, she didn't know what to say. Daniel had saved her. Twice. But she didn't trust him. She couldn't. Her people told stories of humans, of how they ruined planets with machines, of how they lied with smooth voices, of how they made promises that always broke. She had seen what they did to forests like hers. They came with fire, with greed, with hunger for what wasn't theirs. So why was this one different? She glanced back at him once. He wasn't looking at her. He was rubbing Kale's head gently as if the battle hadn't happened. As if they were just out for a walk, not fleeing death. That made her even more suspicious. They stopped at a small stream to drink. The girl knelt and dipped her hands into the cool water. Daniel stayed back, giving her space. "You don't talk much," he said quietly. She didn't answer right away. The water calmed her body, but not her thoughts. "You are human," she finally said. "I was taught never to speak with your kind." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's harsh. Did I do something wrong?" She looked at him slowly. "Not yet." He didn't flinch at her cold tone. "Well, I guess that's better than a yes." She turned away, drying her hands on her torn sleeve. "Why are you here, really? You said you followed trouble. That's not a reason. That's a story." Daniel sighed and sat on a nearby stone. "I came looking for something. Something rare. A flower, actually. A flower," she repeated, her voice flat. He nodded. "They say it glows at night. Grows only in cursed jungles like this. I wanted to see it. Not pick it, just see it." She narrowed her eyes. "You came into one of the most dangerous places on this planet for a flower?" He smiled faintly. "Told you. Trouble follows me." The girl couldn't understand him. He didn't act like the humans in her people's stories. No weapons, no greed, no shouting. Just quiet words and strange reasons. She stepped closer, her blade still at her side. "You expect me to believe that?" "No," he said calmly. "I expect you to keep doubting me. And that's fine. I'd probably do the same." That surprised her. Most humans tried to prove themselves. They begged for trust or tried to charm their way in. This one accepted her doubt like it didn't bother him. "Your snake," she said, changing the subject. "Why does it listen to you?" Daniel looked down at Kale. "Because I listened to him." That answer sat in her chest like a stone. She had never heard anyone speak that way. Not even her people treated beasts as partners. They were tools, guards, weapons, not family. "You risked your snake's life," she said slowly. "You risked your own life." "For me." Daniel didn't smile this time. "You were in trouble. That's all I needed to know." Her fists clenched. "You didn't even know my name." "I still don't," she paused. That was true. In all this chaos, neither of them had shared names properly. It felt strange now after everything they'd been through. "My name is Soraya," she said finally, her voice lower. Daniel nodded. "Soraya, that's a good name." She looked away quickly as if the words were too sharp to hold. A moment passed. Then she said, "If my people see you, they will arrest you. Or worse." Daniel leaned back slightly. "I figured. I'm not really supposed to be here, am I?" "No," she said firmly. "You are not." "And yet," he said, his tone softer now, "I'm still here, talking to you." She hated how calm he was, how gentle. It made her chest tight in a way she didn't understand. Soraya stood up. "We keep moving. The jungle watches us. You don't want to be here after dark." Daniel followed her without a word. As they walked, the silence between them changed. It wasn't cold anymore. It was heavy, but with questions, not hate. Soraya still didn't trust him, but she was curious. About the way he moved. The way he spoke to Kale like a friend. The way he faced monsters without blinking. Maybe he was lying. Maybe he was hiding something, but maybe, just maybe, he was something her people had never seen before, a human worth trusting. The jungle didn't forget. As Soraya and Daniel moved deeper into the thick, dark forest, the air grew hotter, heavier. Every tree branch seemed to whisper. The ground beneath them felt softer, almost alive. Soraya walked in front, blade in hand, her eyes sharp. Daniel stayed close behind, Cale resting quietly on his shoulders. The silence between them had changed. It was no longer cold. Now it carried weight, not just of suspicion, but something new. Something growing. Still, the jungle watched, and it remembered what they had done. They had hurt one of its ancient guardians. The great serpent they had driven off was no simple beast. It was a spirit of the forest, old and feared, and now the jungle wanted revenge. The moment came fast. Soraya stopped suddenly. Her eyes scanned the trees. "The birds," she said, frowning. "They're gone." Daniel looked around. She was right. The jungle had been full of sounds. Buzzing insects, chirping birds, soft growls in the distance. But now, nothing. Cale lifted his head, flicking his tongue nervously. Soraya turned, her voice low. "Something is wrong. The jungle is preparing." "Preparing for what?" Daniel asked. She didn't get a chance to answer. The ground beneath them exploded. Roots thick as arms burst from the soil, twisting like snakes, grabbing at their legs. Vines dropped from the trees like whips, slashing through the air. Daniel jumped back, barely dodging a root that tried to wrap around his ankle. Coil hissed, leaping from his shoulders and striking at the vines. Soraya slashed her blade through the air, cutting a vine in half, then spun to free her leg from a creeping root. "The jungle is alive," Daniel shouted. "No," Soraya yelled back. "It's calling its hunters." From the shadows, dark shapes appeared. Not beasts, not animals, but twisted creatures, part plant, part flesh. They moved on two legs, their bodies covered in leaves and bark, their arms long and sharp like thorns. Jungle guardians, creatures created to protect the heart of the forest. Soraya's heart pounded. These things didn't show themselves unless someone had broken the forest's law, and they had. She raised her blade just in time as the first creature lunged. Its claws met her metal, the sound of screeching bark filling the air. She kicked it back, then spun toward Daniel. "Run!" she shouted, but Daniel didn't run. He grabbed a thick branch from the ground and swung it at a creature charging him. The branch broke in half, but the strike was enough to knock the thing down. Cale wrapped himself around another creature's throat. Hissing and squeezing, they fought side by side, Soraya slashing with deadly speed. Daniel using his hands, his feet, anything he could find. But for every creature they knocked down, two more came. The jungle's revenge was endless, too many. Daniel gasped, backing toward her. His arm was bleeding. Soraya's shoulder had been cut. They were both breathing hard. Cale was still fighting, coiling around one creature's arm, biting it again and again. Soraya looked around. "We can't win here," she grabbed Daniel's arm. "Follow me," they ran. Roots grabbed at their boots. Branches scratched their skin. The guardians chased them, fast and silent. But Soraya knew these lands. She jumped over rocks, ducked under twisted trees, led them toward a hidden path. Daniel followed, trusting her without question. Finally, they reached a wall of hanging vines. Soraya slashed through them and revealed a hidden cave. She pushed Daniel inside first, then followed and pulled the vines back over the entrance. They collapsed onto the cool stone floor, hearts racing. Outside, the forest screamed. The guardians searched, but they didn't enter. The jungle respected old caves. These were sacred, too sacred even for revenge, for now. Inside the darkness, they sat in silence. Blood dripped slowly from Daniel's arm. Soraya tore a piece of her sleeve and tied it around the wound. "You didn't have to stay and fight," she said quietly. "You could have left me." Daniel looked at her. His face was tired, dirt smudged across his cheeks, but his eyes were calm. "I'm not built like that," he said. Soraya looked away. "You're not like the humans in our stories." He smiled faintly. "And you're not like the aliens in mine." For a second, a tiny laugh escaped her lips. The cave was quiet, but something had changed. Not just outside where the jungle hunted them, but inside them too. Soraya had trusted no one her whole life. Her world taught her to survive alone, but now a human sat beside her, bleeding because he had chosen to stand with her. And in that dark cave, where vines whispered and roots pressed against the stone outside, Soraya felt something dangerous growing. Not fear, not hate, but trust. The cave was dark, but it was safer than the jungle. Outside, the forest still hissed with movement, roots shifting, vines creeping, unseen eyes watching. But inside, the stone walls were still. Silent. Soraya sat with her back against the wall, her blade resting on her lap. Across from her, Daniel leaned forward, his hands pressed to his side. The cloth she had tied around his arm was already soaked in blood. He didn't complain, but she could see it, the tightness in his jaw, the way his shoulders drooped, how sweat now covered his forehead. His strength was fading. Kale, his faithful python, lay coiled near his leg, unmoving, exhausted from the fight. Soraya's throat tightened. She had seen warriors fall before, strong ones, brave ones, but something about seeing him like this made her chest feel heavy. "You need rest," she said quietly. Daniel gave a weak smile. "I'll rest when your forest stops trying to kill me." She shook her head. "That cut is deep. You're losing too much blood." Daniel leaned back against the cave wall and took a long, slow breath. Better than being snake food. Soraya moved closer. Her hand reached out, almost hesitant, and gently pressed on the wound. Daniel winced but didn't pull away. "You didn't have to come back for me," she said softly. "Back when the Guardians came, you could have escaped." He looked at her with tired eyes. "I didn't save you because I had to, Soraya. I stayed because I wanted to." The words hit harder than she expected. Her people didn't believe in weakness. They taught survival, strength, silence. Emotions were distractions. But now, looking at this human, hurt, tired, but still here, she felt something stir inside. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "Your kind burns our forests, hunts our beasts, but you carry a snake like a friend. You fight like you care. Why?" Daniel chuckled, though the sound ended in a cough. "Maybe I'm broken." Soraya looked at him for a long moment. "Maybe you're different." She turned to her satchel and pulled out a small silver tube. Twisting the cap, a soft green paste oozed from the end. Without a word, she applied it to his arm. Daniel hissed. "That burns. Means it's working," she said with a faint smirk. For the next few minutes, they sat quietly. The jungle sounds outside began to fade. Even the roots that had once crept along the cave walls now seemed to retreat, as if giving them space. Soraya broke the silence. "You asked why I didn't trust humans." Daniel looked at her. "You don't have to explain." "I want to," she said. "My sister, she trusted one, a human traveler who came with smiles and soft words. He promised to protect her. She helped him escape a storm. But when raiders came looking for him, he gave her up to save himself." Daniel lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry. She died protecting him," Soraya continued, her voice low, shaking. "And he ran while she bled." Daniel didn't try to defend his kind. He didn't offer excuses. He only said, "You have every reason to hate me." She nodded slowly. "But I don't," he blinked. "Why?" "Because you stayed," she said. "You bled beside me. And when my blade dropped, you didn't run." Daniel looked at her differently now, like the wall between them had cracked just enough to see through. Then his head slumped slightly. "Daniel?" He didn't answer. She crawled quickly to his side. His breathing was shallow. The wound on his arm had stopped bleeding, but now his skin was cold. The paste had helped, but not enough. Panic struck her. "Daniel!" she shouted, shaking him. He groaned faintly, but didn't open his eyes. Her mind raced. She didn't know human biology. She had no idea how much blood they could lose. But one thing was clear, he was weak now. Fading. She looked at Kale, who now lifted his head, sensing something was wrong. Soraya stood. Her hands shook. Her heart pounded. She had to choose, leave him, or risk everything to save him. The forest wanted them gone. Her people would arrest him. But something deeper than law, deeper than duty, screamed inside her. She couldn't lose him. Not like her sister. Not again. Soraya looked down at him. This strange human who fought without reason, who gave without asking anything back. "I'm going to get you out," she whispered, voice cracking. "Even if I have to carry you myself." She tied the blade to her back, bent down and began to lift. Soraya staggered through the jungle, the human draped across her back. Daniel's body was heavy, but not because of his size. It was the weight of blood loss, exhaustion, and the memory of everything they had just survived. His arm was limp over her shoulder, and every few steps she had to stop, breathe, and shift his weight again. Her ribs still ached from the serpent's crushing coils. Her legs burned with each step. But she didn't stop, because Daniel had never stopped for her. Kale, the earth python, slithered beside her, matching her pace. His tongue flicked the air as if guiding her through the dark forest paths. Soraya had never trusted a creature like this, but now she watched Kale with new eyes. He wasn't just a pet, he wasn't just a snake, he was family. She whispered as she walked, mostly to herself. "You're going to live, Daniel. You hear me? You didn't bleed all over my forest just to die now." Daniel didn't respond. His head rested against her back, his breath shallow but still there. Faint but alive. The jungle was quiet now. The guardians no longer chased them. The vines no longer struck. It was as if the forest had stopped fighting, not in surrender but in respect. Soraya reached a small cliffside where moss dripped down the stone. Behind the moss was a hidden opening, a sacred spring known only to her people. It was said to heal even near-death wounds. She stepped through. The cave opened to a glowing pool of clear water. Soft green light pulsed from the stones beneath, and the air was cooler here, calmer. She laid Daniel near the edge and quickly knelt by the water. She cupped it in her hands and poured it gently over his wounds. The water shimmered, glowing brighter where it touched his skin. Slowly, the color returned to Daniel's cheeks, his eyes fluttered open. "Where are we?" he whispered. Soraya smiled faintly, her own hands shaking. "A place even the jungle fears to touch." Daniel looked around, his face pale but calm. "Looks like I owe you again." "No," she said softly. "We're even now." Kale slithered forward, resting his head gently on Daniel's chest. Daniel reached up and weakly patted his scales. Soraya watched them. The bond between human and snake was strong, pure, built not from commands but from trust. Then she looked at herself. She had always thought of herself as alone. A warrior, a survivor, no room for softness, no space for bonds. But now, standing in this sacred place with a human at her feet and a serpent at her side, she realized something had changed. Not just around her, inside her. Soraya sat beside Daniel, her voice quiet. "You said Kale was family," Daniel nodded. "Yeah. He saved me more times than I can count." She touched the hilt of her blade, then slowly reached out her other hand to Kale. The snake tilted his head, then moved closer. He brushed against her arm, accepting her presence. "I never had family," she whispered. "Not after my sister died." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. His voice was soft. "Maybe it's time you did." Soraya's chest tightened. Not with fear, but with something warmer. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Not because the jungle had gone quiet, not because she was armed, but because someone had chosen to stand beside her, and never left. Outside, the jungle wind stirred the leaves. The serpent spirit was still alive, watching from afar, but it no longer hunted them. It had tested their strength, their bond, and now it accepted their place. Soraya helped Daniel sit up. The spring's water continued to glow under his hand. "So," he said with a tired smile. "What now?" She looked at him, serious. "Now, we leave this forest, together, alive." Daniel chuckled weakly. "Sounds like a good plan." Kale hissed in agreement. As they stood, Soraya placed her hand over her heart, then tapped her forehead. A gesture of deep honor among her people. "I name you, Jungle Brother," she said. "You have earned my blood's respect." Daniel smiled. "And I name you, Snake Sister. You've earned my scars." They laughed, the sound echoing softly through the cave. Then, step by step, they left the spring behind. Soraya led the way. Daniel followed. Kale slithered between them like a silent guardian. And behind them, the jungle watched, not with hate, but with silent approval. For in the heart of danger, where roots could crush and serpents could kill, a bond had been born between two unlikely warriors, and two snakes from two different worlds.